In other words, we all start Kol Yisrael Yesh Lem Chelik L'Olam Haba. All of us start that we have automatically a share. It's one of the great differences between Christianity and Judaism, lahavdil, is that in Christianity you start minus, and in Judaism you start plus. So in Judaism, the problem is that you can squander it. You can lose it. You can lose it by behavior, by wrong decisions, by foolish ideologies. It's susceptible to loss. So it's like a person makes investment. I heard a lecture this morning from the man that founded PayPal and a few other internet companies. And he was discussing, he's invested in 50 or 60 startups. He said 6 have been successful. 44 of them have been boom, unsuccessful. The only thing is that the 6 have been so profitable that he can afford to lose on the other 44. But a person that invests, and life, after all, is nothing but an investment, so it's susceptible to loss. It's a risk. So Rabbi Eliezer Amodoi points out that our immortality is also at risk. And there are certain things that cause us to lose, cause us to forfeit what we automatically had. And in fact, the way the rabbis looked at it, the risk is always very, very great. That's Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai said, Noach lo adam shelo nivra. Would be better not to have been created at all, because the risks are too great. There are too many things that can happen and do happen. And each of us in life know that the risks are omnipresent and they're very powerful. And therefore, Beis Shammai in effect says we shouldn't have been risk takers. No, he never was created. In other words, our soul should have rested in heaven, because that's where they end up anyway, and without having this journey of risk. So Rabbi Eliezer Amodoi says that even if a person has Torah Masim Tovim, which we think are automatically the ingredients that grant us immortality, there still is a risk. We can still lose by certain behavior and certain attitudes. And he lists them here in Avot. So we're going to go through them one by one and see how they apply to us. So he says, "Hamachaleles HaKadoshim," which literally means to desecrate what was holy. So there are many ways of desecrating holiness, but the word, again, machalel here means to also exchange. Chilul, the Talmud uses it to explain that mechalel min hakodesh al hachol, min hachol al hakodesh. There are ways to exchange holiness to desanctify things. So, for instance, we have a din by Meiser Sheni on the first and second 4th and 5th years of the Shemitah cycle, so a person, and all the years of the Shemitah cycle, person brought Meiser to Yerushalayim, that he had food, and that had to be eaten in Yerushalayim. So we are told that since it's far away, I can't go to Yerushalayim. I have no way to transport all of this fruit. And I have to eat it in Yerushalayim. So because of that, we could exchange it for money. You will bind the money up in your hand, and you'll take it and go up to Yerushalayim. And Yerushalayim, with that money, you'll buy food that'll be eaten in Yerushalayim. So the holiness of the grain or of the fruit is now transferred to the money. It's exchanged. So that's called chilul. That's called the exchange basis by which something which was originally holy can transfer its holiness to something else, which originally was not holy. So Rabbi Elazar Modoi says, the Torah provides for it by Meiser Sheni. But things that are holy, people transfer their allegiance from things that are holy to things that are not holy, to ideals and ideas and ways of life that become the religion itself. And in our time, we are witness how many ideologies have been raised to the level of holiness only to the detriment of those that followed it and to the world generally. I mean, Marxism is a religion. Climate is a religion. And all of these things, you've taken the original holiness of Torah and tradition and Jewish life, and you've exchanged it for something else that became your religion. That's a tragedy. So that therefore, even though the person has Torah, Masim Tovim, nevertheless, immortality is lost thereby because he made a bad investment. Holiness is an investment. And he took the investment and he blew it. He exchanged it for something that is unholy. Now, that's not to say that things that are positive should not be pursued. But it is to say that it does not have the imprimatur of holiness of faith. Hayas Elohim Elohim ve'hem lo Elohim. The human beings have the right to make a God, and they are not a God. And that really is really what all of modernity is about. Manufactured gods. That's the reason the Torah emphasizes over and over again Avodah Zorah. Avodah Zorah is a man-made God. It's a manufactured God. So we don't believe anymore in an idol that we built, but we have ideological idols that we built. and we've taken the Kodashim, what is holy, and we exchanged them for these newly manufactured gods. And we give them a primacy of religion and of faith when they are little more but human thought and policy at most, which is not infallible and which can always be changed. So that is one point that he makes. To take things that are holy and exchange them for unholiness. Now, that applies to human beings as well. Innately, we have holiness within us. My son-in-law and I were over Shavuos studying in Yiddish, a shiur by Rav Soloveitchik, Zidrona Levrocha, in which he discussed the writing of a Sefer Torah. So when you write a Sefer Torah, you know, when the sofer gives you the pen, so you have to say that I'm writing this L'Shem Kedusha Sefer Torah, for the holiness of a Sefer Torah. So I'm investing it with holiness. So the question arises, Ein odom makne dover she'eino shelo. You cannot invest something with what you do not actually possess. So here comes, we all have written a letter in the Sefer Torah, or part of a letter, etc. And people that are, not necessarily the greatest, the pious people in the world. So how can he invest with holiness when he's not holy? And the answer is that every Jew has holiness within himself or herself. Our soul, Elokai neshama shenasat bi tahora. The soul that you have given to me is holy. So I do have an innate holiness. And since I do have an innate holiness within me, I can invest it in the black ink and a piece of parchment, which otherwise, without the investment of holiness by the people, is not kosher. It's not a Sefer Torah. It's the act of sanctifying it that makes it a Sefer Torah. So we have holiness. Now the question is, where do we invest that holiness? Where do we invest that purpose? We see that commitments that people have, beliefs that they have, they're willing to sacrifice for things. They're willing even to give up their lives for things. That's an expression of holiness. But for what? That's the problem. And that's what he means, Amachal Vasakodoshi. You took your holiness and you invested it poorly. You diverted it from its real purpose, from where it should have been. And then he says, Amavazes Amoados, and that he treats the holidays in a shameful fashion. So the Yom Tov, we just went through this wonderful Yom Tov of Shavuos. The Yom Tov carries with it not just laws, but it carries with it a spirit, an aura, a feeling. And Therefore, there are customs that are to be followed for every Yom Tov. So the Shulchan Aruch points out that there should be clothing for Yom Tov. That the clothing for Yom Tov should even be finer quality than for Shabbat, which should be of a finer quality than the weekday. Because we have to make the Yom Tov. We have to, so to speak, raise it. And do it. There are laws about food. The Yom Tov meal is not your everyday Friday afternoon snack. So the Moados come to remind us of the fact that not only special days, but we have to treat them specially. We have to, so to speak, exalt them. So a mavazes avodo, somebody that takes this special day and makes it a weekday, someone that has no sense of elevation, cannot communicate that. So then he shames it. He insults it. He cheapens it. It doesn't mean anything. One of the great tragedies in Jewish life, certainly here in America, where I am now, is that, for instance, their entire Yom Tov is forgotten. Yom Tov Shavuos doesn't exist in America, except for the Orthodox. It just does not exist. You don't know what you're talking about. There is no such Yom Tov. But that began because there was a bizui. It was a shaming of it. And after a while, then it lost all of its aura, all of its trappings. And when that happened, so then the Yom Tov itself eventually disappears from the calendar. Now, that's not true in Israel, Baruch Hashem, because Israel is a Jewish state, no matter how we deal with it. But in the exile, it's a challenge. And because of that challenge, there was constantly bizui amoados in the exile over the past 100 years. So Sukkos wasn't Sukkos, and Shavuos didn't exist, and the Pesach was limited, and all of that has contributed to, unfortunately, the tragedies that we are witness to in Jewish life in the exile. So that's Samavaza Samoados. Now we come to a behavior that the rabbis compared to murder. Amalbin is Pnei Chavero Barabim. Someone that insults someone else publicly. So that's called malbin, that his face turns white. Because when a person is insulted, so the natural reaction of the person being insulted is that his face turns red, he blushes, blood runs to his face, and then it drains, and when it drains, his face is white. So we whitened his face. So I say, in America today, You're not allowed to appear in blackface. That's considered racist and completely unacceptable. But you are allowed to have whiteface. You can insult all you want. And in fact, the whole political system, even in Israel, unfortunately, is built upon insults. It's built upon tearing down the other person. When you make a great political speech, the greatest amount of applause that you have in the speech is when you speak negatively about the other party or candidate, not so much when you speak positively about what your program is or what your intents are. People love insults. There's nothing as good as a good insult. Chazal say because the blood drains from the person's face, it's considered a piece of murder. Miniature murder that you've done to the person. That's malbin as panei chavero borabim, publicly. In our time, when we have attack journalism, attack politics, attack everything, so yeah, unfortunately. So that he said, even the person has Torah Masim Tovim, but look at it, look what he did. And it's almost naive to think that somehow we could have a society without that. But the Torah sets for us goals. And there's a definite goal here, and not to fall prey to such behavior. I remember when I was in the yeshiva, so I had a great Rabbi, Rabbi Rogov, or Mordechai Rogov, who was the kindest, gentlest man in the world. And his classroom was always perfectly disciplined. We were about 30 guys in the class, and not all of us were necessarily quiet, but he had perfect discipline because no one wanted to hurt him. We knew that he would be pained, so no one wanted to give him pain, so everybody behaved themselves. But I do remember that if he had to speak to a student about something that he thought that the student was remiss, he wouldn't do it in class. He would wait till the class was over, and he would take the young woman and talk to him there privately. He wouldn't say it publicly. There's an opposite twist to this too. That's also part of the yeshiva world. There were great Talmidei Chachamim who would say a lecture, a shiur, and someone would start in the middle and stop him and ask a question or give a different. So then he would call him a poyer, meaning you're a Polish peasant. Or he'd call him a chamor, you're a donkey. Or he'd call him a ferd, you're a horse. So there were certain great Gaonim that were known for that trait. So therefore, being insulted was a love pat. And afterwards, the student would go out and he'd say, wow, what a great kasha you had today. He called me a ferd. That was like a compliment. But most of the time, being called a fair publicly is not such a compliment. And people resent it. And he's malbin is b'nei chaver bo Rabbi. It causes pain to a person. We all know, when we're little, we are taught that sticks and stones can hurt me, but words can never do so. But we all know that that's not true. Words are the most painful of things. Stinging words hurt more than sticks and stones. And because of that, therefore, one should avoid at all costs, just like one should avoid murder, God forbid, at all costs. And so too, one should avoid insulting people publicly. And if it's true in a family, how does a parent discipline a child? So there are times when the child has to be disciplined. But in what manner? So in our time, we no longer have corporeal discipline because that's considered child abuse. But if we lose our temper with the child, the child will remember that 50 years later. So this is a very, very tricky area. Children have to be disciplined. Students have to be disciplined. But on the other hand, cannot kill them with it. And then he said, "V'amefer is briso shel Avram Avinu." So in the time of the Talmud of the Mishnah, there were the Hellenist Jews, and then there were later assimilationist Jews. So both the Greeks and the Romans felt that circumcision was a mutilation of the body, was against natural law. And that's one of the things that they resented most about Judaism and the Jews is the Os Bris Kodesh Shechosamta B'Vsorenu. And this was a struggle always. And there always has been, from the beginning of time, attempts to prevent circumcision. Even though medically it's been proven to be of benefit, but that's not the reason that we are circumcised. We're circumcised because of the briso shel Avram Avinu. We see it as a perfection of ourselves, not a mutilation of ourselves. And therefore, there were those that even resorted to painful surgical operations in order to no longer appear circumcised. It was true in the 19th century when the German assimilation reached its heights. But there are organizations throughout the world, and there are governments throughout the world that want to ban it. In Europe, it's always on the agenda. But to us, that's the destruction of the whole tradition of the Jewish people. The bris is Avram Avinu. Where did we start? Where does goodness and kindness and hospitality begins with Avraham. And we want to be a follower of Avraham Avinu. And that's the idea of the Bris Kodesh. And throughout history, Jews have stubbornly resisted any attempts to break that covenant, to say that it doesn't apply anymore. So a person can have Torah, Masim Tovim, and not be connected to Avraham Avinu. So then the investment, so to speak, may not be successful. You can lose what was once a surety, and now because of the risk, it has been taken from us. And then he says, this is a very, very subtle, sophisticated problem. Using the Torah against the Torah, which is done quite often. And because the Torah has such a breadth to it, so one can pick and choose, so to speak, not deal with the totality of Torah, not see this complete essence, and take this one thing and say, well, that's it, all right? The Torah said it, that's it. So therefore, it's shalok halacha. It's not the halacha, because the halacha looks at everything from the broader perspective, from the whole Torah. It's likened to the sightless people who feel the elephant. So one says it's a tree, and one says it's this, one says it's that, but no one says it's an elephant. The halakha makes it an elephant. Then it took the whole Torah, all the apparent different strands of the Torah, put it together in a way of life to live. And therefore, if you're megale ponim b'Torah shelo k'halacha, if you look at the Torah not through a halachic prism, just pick and choose, so then that also is a lost investment. Now, it says hamagale ponim. In today's world, we read about people being unmasked. We reveal the face. That was shalok halacha, that was not proper. It's revealing secrets. It's prying, spying on others. All of that is shalok halacha. It's not acceptable. There's an issue that always exists, the right of privacy of the Torah. We love to hear gossip about people. I want to know, did you hear about Yossel? So that's the law of Losei Lechrochil Ba'amecha. We don't want to hear about him. But that's the juicy conversation that we can have. You're Megala Ponim. You reveal things that you're not supposed to. Well, the first code of a professional is never to reveal, because otherwise it's of no value. And that's a basic fundamental idea that all of us understand and respect. You cannot eat times. When the question of driving an automobile on Shabbat came up, and in 1948, the conservative movement in the United States adopted its policy that one could drive an automobile on Shabbat if one was going to the synagogue. So a long, learned treatise in halacha accompanied the decision, and it was very scholarly, and it had many halachic precepts woven together. But it all came shelo k'halacha. It all came to destroy the Shabbos and not to protect it. Its purpose was not the Shabbos, its purpose was the synagogue, so to speak. And so now it's neither the synagogue nor the Shabbos. Because people are not stupid. If you can drive to the synagogue, then why can't you drive to the supermarket or the Volkers? But that's Begala Pori Bator Shalom Halacha. And the halacha is decided perhaps not immediately. Halacha that have taken generations to be fully decided. Discussion amongst the scholars. Because we want it to fit into the general pattern of what the Torah wants. That takes contemplation, and many times it takes actual time. Circumstances change. So someone that automatically says, I can reveal things, I can create new things, I can innovate, etc. We're all witness to it in our time, all of the prevalent forces that impinge upon traditional Judaism. But they're all doomed to failure because they are not k'halacha. They don't look at the whole thing. They only look at one issue. One issue, whatever that issue is. And that becomes the issue. And Judaism is not a one issue faith or way of life. It's the whole picture. And without looking at the whole picture, one will get the issue wrong almost 100% of the time. So that's what he says. Even though the person may have, you can write a long tshuva and say that it's all right to drive a car on Shabbos. But a lot of Torah in that tshuva. But it's shalom k'halacha. Missed the point. So then then we've lost the investment. What we were given to keep has somehow been squandered and lost from us. So this is a very strong mishna, but it's a very essential one because it points out to us the actuality and reality of life and the importance, therefore, of understanding not only the surface, but the depths of Torah and how to be able to put it together so that we can be Zoche L'chaye Olam Haba. So I want to thank you again for listening, and you should stay well and have a good week. And Thursday we'll talk about the Parsha. And God willing, as I said, I'm coming back a week from Tuesday, and we'll see what happens then. Thank you very much, Kol Tuv Sela.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi, so much. It's always a big honor and a big schus. Again, today's shiur was sponsored by Shirley March in honor of her late mother, Miriam Bas Yaakov, being the neshama. I'm really excited about our shiurim this week. We are continuing in our full programming this whole week, next week. And even when the Rav comes back, we'll make sure we're coordinated on everything. We're excited that the Rav is coming back a week from Tuesday. But until then, we are going full force ahead. We have a special program coming this Tuesday. Stay tuned for it. Tomorrow, I'm going to be speaking at 5 o'clock. And looking forward to seeing everybody at 5 o'clock. It gives us all tremendous chizuk.